I've been using Firebase as my main storage backend for many years, but after building a fairly complex app with Supabase, I immediately realized just how much easier and more straightforward it was to build a complex data schema with Supabase as compared to Firebase. That is why in the future, I plan to exclusively use Supabase, especially for complex apps. I was that convinced. But what is Supabase and how can it make your life easier? In this video, we'll have a comprehensive tutorial on everything that you need to know when it comes to Supabase. Plus, we'll also have a focus on integrating this awesome backend with your FlutterFlow apps. Now, before we get started, as always, all the apps and all the resources that I demonstrate on this channel are going to be available to view and or clone from my Patreon page. And you can learn more about our amazing Patreon community via the link in the description below the video. In this comprehensive training, we're going to be covering what is Supabase and why it is so awesome. We are going to be talking about how to set up Supabase so that you can easily integrate it with any of your third-party apps. We are going to have a deep dive on authentication, which you can use in order to connect your apps to your users, whether these users are going to be logging in using simple email and password or third-party providers such as Google, Facebook, and others. Next, we're going to be covering database, which is pretty much the meat of Supabase. This is why most people choose Supabase over other competitors. And here we're going to have a deep dive on different ways that you can structure, store your data, as well as access it. Next, we're going to talk about storage. This is where you can store various data, various files, and then access them later in your apps. Most importantly, we're going to be talking about how to integrate your Supabase project with your no-code builder of choice, with specific focus on FlutterFlow, which I consider the very best no-code builder right now. So if you're looking to build apps with Supabase, this is going to be an important section that you definitely do not want to miss out. Last but not least, I'm going to be sharing with you various best practices, tips, and tricks so that you can make your Supabase journey as seamless and as painless as possible. Rest assured, by the time you finish watching this video, you're going to have a complete understanding of what makes Supabase great, and most importantly, how Supabase can make your life a lot easier, allowing you to build amazing apps in record time. All right, so let's begin by defining what exactly Supabase is. So this is their homepage, and this is what they say. Supabase is an open source Firebase alternative. Start your project with a Postgres database, authentication, instant APIs, edge functions, real-time subscriptions, storage, and vector embeddings. And you can kind of learn more about it. As you can see, they have a database subsystem, they have authentication subsystems, they have an edge functions subsystem followed by storage, real-time, and vector. Now, Supabase is 100% free and it's also open source. So if you head over to their GitHub page and you scroll down, you will see that Supabase is an open source Firebase alternative. We're building the features of Firebase using enterprise grade open source tools, and then they list the various things that you get as part of Supabase. So if you think about Firebase that you've been using for a while, and really Firebase is a collection of different offerings, right? Things like authentication, database, and in your apps, you can be using, one of these offerings, you could be using multiple of these offerings, or you may be using all of these offerings at the same time. And this is exactly what Supabase is. Now, if you scroll down, you will see this important statement here. Supabase is a combination of open source tools. We are building the features of Firebase using enterprise-grade open source products. If the tools and communities exist, we will use and support that tool. If that tool doesn't exist, we build and open source it ourselves. Now, it's important to understand that Supabase is not a one-to-one mapping of Firebase. Our aim is to give developers a Firebase-like developer experience using open source tools. So what they're saying here is that this is not exactly a one-to-one alternative, meaning that it's not an exact alternative to Firebase. But for the purpose of developing your apps, you're getting the most important features and functionalities in a nicely packaged open source and 100% package. Now, being a free and an open source project means that you can also host it yourself for absolutely free. So you can either use this service right here on supabase.com, which is what I personally use, or if you're so inclined, you can host it yourself. Here we have official documentation from Supabase that tells you how you can self-host it, right? So you have two officially supported options. You can host it on Docker, right? You can deploy Supabase within your own infrastructure using Docker Compose, or you can do BYO cloud, which is bring your own cloud, meaning that you can just host it on your own servers or on some virtual server providers as well. And so what this means is that you have a couple of options even before you start using Supabase. If you do not want to host it, if you do not want to spend your time trying to figure out how to host this product, then you can easily sign up for an account on Supabase. They have a free plan. You can use the free plan, which is what I'm doing right now, and you can start building your apps with Supabase. Now, if you're interested in taking this source code and self-hosting it, you can do that as well. It's really, really up to you. I would just say that if you're just starting out and you don't have crazy needs and you don't have an app with millions and millions of active users, you just want to get started, you just want to figure out how it works, you want to get comfortable, you want to build your first app, then I would highly recommend that you guys head over to Supabase and create your own free account, get started, and then maybe down the road, as your needs expand, as you get more and more users, as your apps become more and more successful, you can think about either, jumping on the next plan or self-hosting Supabase altogether. Next, let's go ahead and create our account on Supabase and talk about the dashboard and the different things that you can do with your project. So once you've created your free account, you should see this dashboard right here. When you click on this, you're going to be redirected to your dashboard. So here we are logged into Supabase dashboard. On the left-hand side, we have various options concerning our entire account, right? So we can see all the projects, organizations, preferences, access tokens, different guides, API references that we're going to be talking about a little bit later. But right here, we are seeing all the projects that I have for this specific account. Now, right now, I only have one project here. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a brand new project so that we can explore it together. I'm going to click right here, choose the organization. I'm going to give this project name, project 2. We're going to create a database password. Use this password right here. We're going to leave everything on default and click on create new project. Okay, we're going to give it a few moments. All right, it's setting up our project right now. All right, so our new project has been created. So here's the main page for this new project that we created. PRG2 or project 2, and it's telling us welcome to your new project. Your project has been deployed on its own instance with its own API all set up and ready to use. So it's telling us get started by building out your database, explore our other products, so things like authentication, storage, edge functions, and real time. And you can also connect to your new project. Okay, this is going to be all very, very important later on in this tutorial when we are going to be connecting to our Supabase app with our front-end app that we're building in FlutterFlow. And so if you've ever created a Firebase project before, this process is very, very similar, except when you create a Supabase project, it creates all of these other products or subsystems automatically. With Firebase, on the other hand, you have to enable a specific product inside of your project individually, okay? So as a result, we have all of these things enabled. They are ready to go. We can start using them. Now, on the left-hand panel here, you can explore each one of these different project subsystems in greater detail. So we have things like a table editor, you have a SQL editor, we have a database, we have authentication, we have storage, edge functions, followed by reports, logs, API docs, and project settings. And so now that we have created our Supabase project, we can dive deeper into the individual subsystems. Next, let's talk about authentication. Authentication is the process of checking whether the user has the right credentials for accessing a specific resource. And Supabase offers very comprehensive and rich authentication capabilities. Scroll down and you click right here on authentication on this left-hand pane here, you will see your authentication dashboard. On the left-hand pane, you are going to see various options. So the first thing that we're looking at is the users. And right now, because this is a brand new project, we don't have any users, but that is going to change real soon. Next, you have different configuration options. So if you click on policies, you will see this is where you can create various role level security, RLS policies. And this is something that we're going to be covering in depth in just a little bit. Next, we have providers, and these are your third-party auth providers. You can authenticate your users through a suite of providers and login methods. So right now we have email enabled, but as you can see, we have a ton of different third-party providers. Okay, so you can also do phone, you can do Discord, you can do GitHub, Google, Twitch, Twitter, etc., etc. And what this means is that instead of the system having to know the user's login and password or their email and password and kind of verifying all of that itself, the system can instead rely on some third-party service to verify whether the user has their credential information. So in this case, let's say we want to connect it with Twitter. Well, if the user can log into Twitter, then they will be allowed to log into our app. Same thing for LinkedIn. If the user is able to successfully log into LinkedIn, then we can say that this is the correct user, this is who they say they are, and we can allow them into our app. This is very useful because, for instance, with Google, everybody has a Google account. And so it's very easy to say, well, you don't have to create a new account for our app. You can simply log in with your Google account. And typically, if they're browsing the internet, they are on YouTube, they are already logged into their Google account, and they can simply log into our app as well, without needing to create another account specifically for our app. And so these third-party auth providers are very useful for developing apps, because that is one aspect of your app that you do not need to worry about as long as your users have an account on one of these sites. Next, if you click on email templates, you can see various emails that you can compose and send to your users, right? So these are email templates that you can customize the emails that will be sent out to your users. Okay, so this is confirm sign up. This is for inviting a user. You can send them a magic link. This is for change email address or reset password. So if the user is taking a particular action on your app, right, we need to confirm sign up. So if they sign up, but we also want to make sure the email they specify is correct, we are going to send them this email that's going to say something like confirm your sign up. Follow this link to confirm your user, and you have this confirmation link, which is like a token, right? Which is part of these message variables that you simply insert into your email. And this is going to be automatically generated. So you can modify all this email text as long as you have this confirmation URL as part of your link. it's going to automatically generate this variable right here while keeping everything else the same. And it's the same process for the other actions as well. So for like, magic link, right? You can send them a magic link, follow this link to login, and there's a confirmation URL. And a magic link is nice when you want to log in the user just via their email. So they don't even need a password, right? They enter their email, they get a magic link, they click the magic link, and they're automatically logged in, right? And you can modify all of this right here. You can change email address, reset password, etc., etc. And this is very, very useful if you want to customize these email templates for your specific app, for your specific use case. Last but not least, we have the URL configuration, and this is where you can specify your site URL. Now, if I go back into users, I can simply click on add a user, and I can either send an invitation. So I can click here, I can enter the user's email, and that's going to send them an email with a link to create an account. Or I can create a new user manually right here. So if I click here, I can just create an account. So let's say james@james.com, and I can also auto confirm the user. Okay, so I can create the user without sending them a confirmation email. This is very, very useful in those situations where you want to create users manually, and you just want to create various accounts without needing to verify the email. So this is useful in situations where I'm building an app that might have tons of users, and I want to create like 5 users, and I don't want to worry about verifying whether their emails exist or not. I just want to create those users and start testing my app as these users. So like in this case, this email obviously doesn't exist, or maybe it does, but that's not my email. I could just click on create a user, and I went ahead and created a new user. And now we have a user record right here created. Now you can also click right here. You can do send password recovery. You can send a magic link, and you can also delete a user right here. So at this point, we have created our first user with email as the authentication provider. And so when we eventually connect this project to our new FlutterFlow app, that's going to happen a little bit later in the training, we will be able to log into our app using Supabase authentication with this user right here. That is pretty much all that you need to do at this point. It's very, very easy and very, very seamless. Next, let's discuss the database subsystem. And this is considered by many the meat of Supabase, and why a lot of people decide to pick Supabase over various competitors, and myself including. So if you head over to this left-hand pane, you can click on database right here. And this is where you can look at your existing tables or create a new table. You also have a nice feature called a schema visualizer. You can create triggers, functions. You can take a look at various extensions. You have roles, replication, webhooks, wrappers, backups, migrations, and indexes. Now, for the purpose of this tutorial, we're only going to be discussing things like tables, schema visualizer, and then talk a little bit about extensions as well. Now, when it comes to Supabase, Supabase is actually based on PostgreSQL, which is a very, very old and proven standalone database engine and system. So PostgreSQL has been around for ages. It has been around since like the beginning of the internet, and it's very, very proven. It has been used everywhere. And essentially what Supabase is, Supabase's database subsystem is basically built on top of Postgres. So that means you can be rest assured that it's based on a proven database engine that has been used in real world apps for quite a while, and it's very, very fast, and it's not going to let you down. So when you're creating tables, you're doing various queries, you're doing various things, you're essentially interacting with this PostgreSQL. Now, if you are coming from a NoSQL background, so if you started building apps by using Firebase's Firestore DB, then all of these tables and SQL and views, etc., it's going to feel a little different compared to what you're used to. Okay. On the other hand, if you're coming from a relational database background, you're going to feel right at home. So how exactly does this work? Well, it's actually very, very simple and very, very intuitive. Every entity that you want to describe, every entity in your app is going to have its own table. Okay. So for instance, let's say I'm building an app that has various cars and then owners of those cars. Well, right off the bat, I have two entities. I have users, which are owners, and I have cars. So in this case, what I want to do is I want to create a new table here, and I'm going to call it cars. Okay, it's always a good idea to name your tables with a plural. So cars instead of car. Here you can have an optional description. You can kind of skip that. Next, you have an option of enabling row level security or RLS. Okay, and this allows you to restrict access to your table by enabling RLS and writing Postgres policies. So this thing in a nutshell is a way to set up different policies on who exactly can access your data. So maybe you want everybody to access your data, but only the owner to be able to modify this data or to delete this data. Okay, and you can do exactly this. So we are going to enable row level security because this is best practice. But on the other hand, if you're just building your app, you're in the testing phases, you're in the development phases, and you are sure that nobody will have access to your app, you can just disable this just to make things easier. But we're going to enable this because I want to show you how it works. You can also enable real time, and this is going to broadcast your changes on this table to authorized subscribers. And this is something we're going to be covering a little bit later in the video. But right now, I'm just going to uncheck this, okay? Now, in this section, you can define various columns or fields that the records in your table will have. Now, you can also import data via spreadsheet. So if you click here, you can just upload CSV. And you can also paste text. Now, this is very, very useful functionality, because if I already have data, then I don't have to mess around with this. I can just, import my data and maybe modify some of the fields. And this is something that very, very tricky to do with Firestore DB because it's not built-in functionality. You have to use third-party tools to do this. So the fact that you can do this will save a lot of users a lot of time. Now, let's go ahead and create our data schema by adding various columns. Now, the first thing I want to store is I want to store the brand. Okay, what is the brand of the car? Is it a BMW? Is it a Mercedes? Is it a Buick? After you give it a name, the next thing you want to do is pick the type. Now, if you're going to be storing text, you just want to keep it simple and select text. If you're going to be storing numbers, then you want to choose numeric. If you're going to be linking this column to another table, and that is something that we're going to be doing in just a little bit, you will have to pick a different data type, and I'm going to show you exactly what. Now, in this case, a brand is text, so we're going to select text. Next, you can specify a default value, meaning that if you create a record, but you do not specify a brand, do you want the system to autofill the value for you? Well, in this case, we do not want it to do it, right? We want to specify the brand. So we're not going to specify default value. Next, you can specify a key here, right? And keys are useful when it comes of finding various records in your table or connecting this one table to another table. Right now, ID is used as the primary key here, and we're fine with that. We do not want to have the brand to somehow be used as a key because brands are not unique. They're text, and we don't want them to have anything having to do with keys. So we're just going to leave it as is. Next, we're going to create a couple of other fields. Next field I want is a model. It's also going to be text. We're going to select text and keep everything the same as the previous field. Next, I want to somehow link these cars to a potential owner. Okay, I don't want these cars to just appear in space without being linked to anyone. If you think about the cars that you see on the roads, well, all of them have license plates, and you can link that license plate information to a registered owner or registered user. And that's exactly what we want to do here. And so we're going to click on Add Column, and we are going to type owner ID, because this is going to be the user that is going to be linked to this specific car record. Now, because we're going to be linking this owner ID to another entity, users in this case, in most situations, that means creating another table. But this is a special case because users table is already created for us, right? So when I talked about authentication, when I talked about creating a user, well, those users that you create when you create a new record, they're put in a built-in table called users. And you can see that table by clicking here and creating something called a foreign key relation, which is where you are linking one record to another record. But before we can do that, we need to give it a type. So because we're going to be linking this to the user's record ID, we need to give it a type called UUID, which is a universally unique identifier. And you're going to see exactly what it is in just a moment. But if you select this, now you can click here and you can edit foreign key relation. So when you click here, you want to select your schema, you want to scroll down and select auth, which is authentication. And from here, you can scroll down and select users. And now it's asking us to select a column from auth users to create a reference. This is what we want. We want the ID column. And here you can leave all of this on defaults. Okay, you want to click on save. And now we've essentially created a relationship to another table, which is going to make it a lot easier to have these two tables working together. So at this point, I want to click on save, and it's going to go ahead and create a new table cars for us. And now, as you can see, we have a new table cars here in our database table. Okay, this has no description. It has no rows. It has 16 kilobytes of size. It's not real-time enabled. We can always enable it later, and it has 5 columns. Now, for any reason, if you want to modify this table by adding or deleting columns, you can simply click here and you're going to be redirected to the same screen as before. And here you can add columns or you can remove columns here. It's very, very common to modify the table as you're building the app. You can also click on this 5 columns here and you can see all the columns that you have here, and you can delete them here or you can modify them here as well. Now, once you've created your first table, you want to head over to Table Editor and you can work with this new table. So here you can create a new table right off the screen, or you can click on one of your existing tables. So for instance, if we click on cars here, you can see all the data that you have here. This table is empty. You can add rows to this table to get started, or you can create a new record. So let's say I want to create a new record. I'm going to create a new row right here, and I'm going to be greeted with this create new row dialog box, and you have to fill out the fields for this new record that you want to create. Now, these 2 fields are going to be automatically generated for you. So if you do not specify the ID, it's going to automatically generate an ID. And if you do not specify this created date timestamp, it's also going to automatically create this date timestamp here as well. So we can skip these here. Next, we have these optional fields. So we have brand, model, and owner ID. So let's say we want to create a new brand, BMW, model is M3. Now here for the owner ID, we do not need to type in the ID ourselves because we linked it to another table. We can click here and it's going to go to that linked table and let us select the appropriate record. So I'm going to click here. It's going to load up this table. There should be just one user, the user that we created previously, and we can simply select this user. Now, on the other hand, if we didn't link the table, we would need to find this ID and then copy it and paste it in the record. But because we linked it, we can simply select it and it's automatically entered for us here. Next, I want to click on save. And now I've created a new car record with a linked owner that's a link to another table. Now, this table does not have any RLS policies. So let's go ahead and enable this now, and let's create a couple of policies so that we can make this table a lot more secure. So you want to click here, and now you're going to be back on the screen called policies with the table selected here, and we have RLS enabled, but there's no policies created yet, which means that nobody will be able to access this table from the outside. So if we were to build our app right now, and we try to access the table, we would not be able to access it because RLS is enabled, but we haven't defined any policies specifying who is able to access what. So we want to click on new policy here, and here you have a couple of options. You can get started quickly. You can create a policy from a template, while here you have full customization. You can create a policy from scratch. So if you select this option right here, you can get started via a nice template. So you can enable read access to everyone. You can enable insert access for authenticated users only. Here you can enable update access for users based on their email, enable delete access for users based on their user ID, enable insert access for users based on their user ID. So it's very, very flexible. You can create as many of these policies as you want, and they can be as specific or as granular as you want. So for instance, let's go ahead and enable read access to everyone. We're going to say use this template, and when we select it, it autofills this screen for us, because if we decided to go through the full customization route, we would be presented with the screen that we need to fill out ourselves. And it's actually very, very easy to do, but still, when you're just getting started, working with templates is a lot easier. So it says here, enable read access for all users. And here it's selecting the operation, right? This is the allowed operation. Obviously, I can select another operation. I can select all if I want, but I'm going to keep it on select. Here we have target roles, and this defaults to all public roles. And next, we have an expression that needs to return a Boolean. So in this case, we're going to have true, which means that for select operations, it's going to be available for everyone. There is no condition, right? It says here all users, and so it doesn't really matter who is doing the select. Select is available to everyone. So we're going to keep this to true, and we're going to say review, and now it generates a SQL statement for us. You got to understand that under the hood, everything is SQL queries. Okay, so when you're creating a new table, when you're creating columns, when you're adding columns, removing columns, all it's doing is generating a SQL statement that the system can understand. So in this case, it says here, create policy, enable read access for all users. This is a description. This is our table cars as permissive for select, on select, to public using true, right? So that means regardless who you are, you'll be able to access data. Save policy right here. And now we have this policy listed right here. So enable read access for all users. This is the select policy. And here you can come back and you can edit this policy. You can change it. You can create a new condition, or you can delete it all together. Now, apart from viewing the records in your tables via this beautiful table interface here, you can also click on SQL Editor here, and you can work with your data via SQL statements, which is essentially how it talks to your system under the hood. Now, here you have various templates that you can take a look. You have your create table, add view, add column, etc., etc. You also have various quick starts, so you can create a table with all the countries in the world. You can do a to-do list, build a basic to-do list with role level security, lang chain, etc., etc. Now, SQL in itself is a whole other topic, and that would take another very, very long video. But in a nutshell, you can type something like this: select from cars. And if you execute that, you will see all the data that you have stored in cars. And here you can also specify if you want just to view specific fields or columns. So I can say select brand from cars, re-execute, and I'm only going to see that brand for that one car. Now, apart from the simple select statement where we are just getting the records in our table, you also have various statements that can order your query by a specific field. You can group by specific records. You can also insert new records via an insert. You can update via an update field. You can also delete, drop, rename your tables, a ton of other things that we really can't go into this video because it's going to take an entire other. And so you have a ton of other SQL commands at your disposal that lets you do pretty much anything that you want to your data. Now, one of Supabase's most powerful features, in my opinion, is the ability to combine various tables and show you the exact data that you want. So for instance, we have this cars table here that only has the car information, and it also has the owner ID that is a unique record in another table altogether. Now, let's say I'm building an app, and in my app, I have a screen where I need to combine information from several tables, from at least 2 tables. So in this case, I want to display various car information, but I also want to display something about the user. I don't want to display their user ID because that's meaningless to my users that are using the app. I want to display something concrete, maybe their name or their email. So for instance, if you click here, you will see that we are storing the user's email here, right? We have their email. So wouldn't it be cool to be able to display like BMW M3 and then the users, the owners' email as well? Well, as you can see, we don't have their email directly stored on this table. We have to get it by jumping a couple of hoops. We need to go to another table that's linked to this table, and we need to pull up the relevant information. Well, thankfully, Supabase has this amazing feature called views that allow you to create a view that shows you the data from multiple tables if you want. And so you can head over to the SQL editor right here. Now you can create this view manually by typing in your SQL statement here, or you can ask Supabase AI to build that query for you just by explaining what you wanted to do. And so let's say I want to create a view with information from the cars table as well as from the users table. So what I want is I want a view, create a view that displays the usernames, car brand, and car model. Okay, so let's see if that works. We've typed in our prompt here. We're going to execute this prompt. All right, now it's thinking here, and it went ahead and created a SQL statement that creates this view for us. So on this screen, what we are seeing is what we had before and what we have now. Because we didn't have anything before, it was just an empty screen. We can click on accept change, and now we have a SQL statement that was automatically generated for us via this Supabase AI. And essentially, it's creating a view called car info. And as you can see here, it's pulling in the email, and it says here U email, but here it says C brand, C model. And this U and C represent different tables that it's essentially joining in together, because that's exactly what it is. When it comes to SQL databases, you are essentially joining various tables together to get the data that you need. And so in this case, we have U that's from auth users and C is from cars. Okay, and we're joining them on this user ID. That's the link between these 2 tables. Now, we're not done yet. This is just a statement. We don't have a view yet. We don't have anything. All we have is a statement that will generate the view. And so at this point, you can simply run this query, and if everything goes well, it's going to generate this view. And so if you see success, no rows returned, that means that you've successfully created this view. And now you can go back to your table view here, and along with this table that we've created before, this cars table, you're going to see this car info as a view. You see it's going to have this little icon there. So if you click on this car info, it's going to behave exactly like a table. Okay, so you're going to see the fields that you care about, and you're going to see the information. So in this case, we're seeing a list of cars with their owner's email as a result of joining these 2 tables together. Now, you can join multiple tables together. It doesn't need to be just 2. You can join 3 tables. You can join a bunch of other tables. And in fact, in many situations, you're going to be joining various tables because the nature of SQL is to create one table per entity. That's called normalization. That's really what makes SQL so easy and awesome to work with, is that you have an entity, you create a table. You have another entity, you create a table. And then you create various views that give you the data that you need for specific situations. And this makes it super easy and straightforward in terms of building apps, because your app is going to have various views, various screens, and you can create different views here in your Supabase dashboard to just show you the data that you need. And so as a result, we have this car info, which is a view that gets us this data. And when you're actually going to be pulling this data from FlutterFlow, you're going to be treating this view as a table. FlutterFlow does not care. The only main difference is that with this table, you can actually add rows, you can modify, you can remove columns. This is real data, right? This is actual data. A view, on the other hand, is merely a connection to your tables. You can modify the structure of the view, but you can't delete things and they're not going to affect the actual tables. It's like executing a SQL statement to get you various data, but a view is essentially a gateway to your tables. You can modify how the view is structured. You can change what kind of data you want or what kind of fields that you want, but you can't edit the original data from the view. And so unlike a regular table, you can't add new rows, you can't add new columns. The only thing that you can do is you can click on definition right here. You can take a look at your SQL statement, and then you can click on open in SQL editor, and then you can kind of work with it. You can rename this view, you can drop this view, create a new view, you can replace this view with another view. That's really all you can do. And that is perfect for our use case of building apps, because that's exactly what we want. We want to have our tables that represent various entities, but then we want to have a view that mixes and matches various data from various tables. Now, if you're enjoying the training so far, definitely have a look at Mastering FlutterFlow, which is my own training when it comes to building amazing FlutterFlow apps. There you will learn everything that you need to know when it comes to building all kinds of no-code apps, from very, very simple to very, very complex. Plus, you'll get access to our private community where you can ask all kinds of questions and get all kinds of advice when it comes to building your no-code app. You can learn more about this amazing training via the link in the description below the video. If you're serious about no-code, I really do hope to see you inside of our community. Next, let's talk about storage. So if you head over to this left menu and you click on the storage icon, you're going to be on a page that looks something like this. Now, if you're coming from Firebase, this storage should be very, very familiar to you, because it works very, very similarly to Firebase's storage subsystem as well. And so here you can create buckets to store and serve any type of digital content. Make your buckets private or public, depending on your security preference. So here we can create a new bucket. So let's say we call it B1, and you have some additional settings. So you can specify this bucket to be public. So you can click here and it's going to be public. And you also have some additional configuration. You can restrict file upload size for this bucket. You can prevent uploading of file sizes greater than a specified limit. So you can click here and you can specify a specific limit in bytes, kilobytes, megabytes, or gigabytes as well. And here you can also restrict the type of files that you want this bucket to have. So allowed MIME types. A MIME type is basically a type of file. So like image JPEG, image PNG, audio MPEG, video MP4, etc., etc. So you can just specify a comma separated a list of values. So something like this, image PNG. And if I do that, then this bucket can only contain JPEGs and PNG files. Okay, we're going to separate them, and we're going to leave all of this on defaults. We're going to click save, and that's going to go ahead and create our new bucket. So here we are in this screen where we can manage the files in this specific bucket. So I can click on upload and I can select a random file, upload it here, and now my file has been successfully uploaded. And in this case, I've just uploaded one of my thumbnails for my videos. And once you upload a file, you naturally have, you can download it. You can also get a URL. So you can get a publicly available URL that you can pretty much do anything that you want. So this is very helpful when you are dealing with an app where you need to upload a file and then you need that file, that image or PDF or audio to be publicly available. And so here you can get a URL that's going to expire in 1 week. So I just got a URL, and if I paste it, I'm going to be able to download this image, and this URL is going to expire in a week as well. Now, buckets, just like tables, can have various access policies attached to them. So if you click on policies here, you can create and manage various policies. So here we have storage policies, and then you also have a bunch of other policies. So the first thing you want to do is you want to create a policy by clicking here. And as was the case before, you can get started quickly, or you can have full customization. So you want to start with a template if you do not have much experience with this, and just to get an idea what kind of access policies you can create, because you can create as specific access policies as you want. So for instance, here we have an access policy that will allow access to JPEG images in a public folder to anonymous users. Here's another access policy that's going to give users access to only their own top level folder named as UID. Here you have another policy: give users access to a folder only to authorized users, followed by give access to a nested folder called admin assets only to a specific user, and followed by give access to a file to a user. Okay, so this is a specific file, so you specify this file and you specify the user ID here. So if these two are match up, so the user is trying to access this specific file and this is the user's ID, then the user will be able to get access to this file. So as you can see, you can create all kinds of very, very interesting access policies so that only specific users will have access to a specific resource. Okay, and so when it comes to creating access policies, you have to understand that there are three things at play here. There's the name of the resource, there's the user that is trying to access the resource, and then there's also the type of operation. So whether we are creating a new file, we are updating a new file, we're deleting a file, right? So you have all of these various things to think about. So as an example, let's say we want to create a very, very simple access policy. So allow access to JPEG images in a public folder to anonymous users. We're going to click use this template right here. And on this screen, we can further refine the policy. So we have the policy, but now we need to select the operations. So what do we want to allow? Do we want to allow, selects? Do we want to allow inserts? Do we want to allow updates or delete, right? It's the exact same thing as was the case with tables, right? So select is like a read-only policy, insert is a write policy, update is a write policy, and delete is being able to delete various objects. So as an example, if I click here, I can see these ones light up. So now download, list, create signed URL, what we just did before, create signed URLs, get public URL are available. If I select delete, then only this one is available, right? Get public URL, okay? So we're gonna keep this on select. We're gonna click on review. Now you can see the entire policy and says here, create policy. This is the description right here. On storage objects for select to public, and this is the policy using, this is the condition, right? So what you're doing is you're creating a condition, then you need to specify the operation, right? What exactly is the user going to be doing? And when you're happy with everything, you can just click on save policy, and we have just created our first policy. Now you can click here, you can edit this, you can delete this as well as you see fit. And later down the road, you can create new policies here. Now, all of the things that we talked about so far is really, really nice. The ability to create tables, views, storage, authentication, etc., etc. But it's pretty much of no use to us if we cannot interact with this data from the outside, if we cannot build apps that connect to our Supabase instance and actually read this data or write this data. Fortunately, Supabase has a very, very comprehensive API interface that allows you to pretty much do anything that you want using third-party tools or apps. And so if you go here in the left-hand panel and you click on API Docs, you will see the ability to access all of your data using an API interface. So here in this Getting Started section, if you're building an app from scratch with code, then you have to initialize your Supabase instance using this code here. And after that, you can use this authentication code to actually connect to your system and authenticate. Now, if you move down to tables and views, you can actually select the table and the view that you want to access and get the system generated API call to access your data. So check this out. Let's say I want to access the cars table via an API. All I need to do is select cars. And up here, what I want to do is I want to select either JavaScript or Bash. Now, if I'm building a JavaScript app, then these JavaScript code snippets are enough. I can just simply copy them and I can use them in my app. But if you're building an app with one of these no-code tools such as FlutterFlow, chances are you're going to be using either FlutterFlow's built-in support for Supabase, and we're going to be covering that a little bit later in this video, or you're going to be making direct API calls from FlutterFlow to your Supabase instance. And in this case, you want to click on Bash, and then you can also click on this, select your public key, and you're going to have your API snippets ready to go. So let's say I want to read all the rows. All I need to do is copy here. I'm going to go into one of my API testing tools. I'm using Rapid API. It's a free tool for Mac. You can easily download it. I'm going to go into File, Import Text, paste all of this that I just copied from Supabase, click on Import, and I have a request generated automatically. So now I can execute this request and I'm going to get the data, right? So this is my response right here. I can look at this, and remember, my table, my cars table, only has one record, that brand BMW and the model M3. And right away, this API call works perfectly. We have a 200 OK. And I'm accessing the data in a very, very easy to work with JSON format. Now I can do the same thing with views as well. Once I've created a view that gets me the data that I want, I can access the data in there just like how I would access a table. So here I have car info selected. I can scroll down, read all rows. I can just copy it right here and I can make a new request. I can go into File, Import Text, paste this. And I have a new request. Now I can execute this and I'm going to have the data just how I expected it to have. So now I'm getting the email, I'm getting the brand, and I'm getting the model. Now the thing about views is I can only read rows. I can't, add new records. I can't update records. I can't delete records, because remember, a view is just a read-only way to access your existing data in your tables. I can also filter the data that I'm getting. But for instance, in the case of a real table, I can do a lot more. I can insert rows. I can update rows. I can delete rows. I can do all kinds of interesting things. So for instance, I can insert a new row. I can just copy this request, come in here, File, Import Text, paste this. And now all I need to do is modify the request. So I have some columns, some values. So let's say we have brand, we have model, and that's it. That's all I care about. So brand is, let's say, Ferrari, and model is red Ferrari. Okay, and that's all I need to do. I'm going to execute it. But once I execute it, I get a unauthorized error. It's telling me new row violates a row level security policy for table cars, and that is because I have a particular security policy. So all I need to do is click on table editor, pick my cars, click here, do view policies, and I can take a look. I have enable read access. I don't have write access. So I can create a new policy, full customization, and I'm going to select insert, and I'm going to say allow insert. Okay, and here I can just do true, which means this condition is always going to be true for inserts. review, save policy. And now I should be able to add a new row. So I'm going to go back here, re-execute this, and now it says 201 created. And now I can go back here to my table, select cars, and I should have a new row that I've just created. And as you can see, I have a new row created, Ferrari, red Ferrari, and later on I can assign this specific car to its rightful owner via this foreign key link. And last but not least, I can also delete records. So all I need to do is scroll down. There's insert, update, delete, copy this right here, file, import text, paste this, import, and we have a new request. And in the URL parameters, all I need to do is specify a column and some value so that I can find that value in that specific column and delete the record. Now, before we execute this request, we want to make sure that we have the right policies. We're going to come by here, create a new policy, full customization. We're going to say delete, allow delete, and this is going to say true, review, save policy. And now we can go back to our request. We can just specify ID equals 1, which is the first record in our table there, in this cars table right here. And now if we execute this, it should hopefully delete it. And as you can see, once we refresh the table, we do not have that record anymore. And so as you can see, it's very, very simple to get started with Supabase's API interface and interact with your data. All right, so you've created your Supabase project, you've created a bunch of tables, you imported some data, maybe you've created a view or several views, and now you're interested in actually building a full functioning app with Supabase as the backend. And so right now, that is exactly what we're going to be doing. We're going to jump into my no-code tool of choice, which is FlutterFlow, and we are going to build a simple app using our Supabase project as the backend. The app is going to support authentication. It's going to be pulling data from the tables. It's going to be pulling data from the views, and everything is going to come together. All right, so here I am in FlutterFlow. I just created a brand new app. I haven't yet configured it, which is what we're going to be doing right now. So the first thing that you want to do is you want to go into settings and integration, and you want to head down to Supabase, and you want to enable Supabase. Now, once you enable Supabase, you need to provide these two fields here. And how do you do that? Well, you need to go to Supabase and look them up. And here I am back in Supabase. And if you head over to project settings, you click on API, you will see all the data that you need to provide to a third-party app in order to access your project. So the first thing we're going to do is copy this URL, head back here, paste it here, and then it needs this anon key. And this is your anon key right here. You can use this because if you use an anon key and you connect to your Supabase project using this anon key, then you have that row level security to help you and to kind of make sure that you have the right permissions set up. On the other hand, you do not want to be using the service role, right? This key has the ability to bypass row level security. Never share it publicly. So you do not want to be sharing this key unless you have a really good reason. Okay, so we're going to copy this, come back here, paste it in here. Next thing you want to do is click on Get Schema, and it's going to connect to your Supabase project and get the schema. So as you can see, it has pulled our one table, which is cars, and our views right here, which is this car info view. And now we finished configuring access to our database. Now it says here Supabase storage. If you expand this, it tells us that Supabase storage is supported. Simply set up storage in the Supabase console to enable it. When uploading images or files, you can use the upload to Supabase option. Okay, and because we have Supabase storage enabled in our project, we can use this right away. Now, there's one more thing that we need to do. We also want to enable authentication. So if we click on authentication here, we're going to enable authentication, and for authentication type, we're going to select Supabase. Once we select that, we need to specify two pages. We need an entry page and a logged in page. So the logged in page is going to be the page that we already have, which is the home page. And for the entry page, we want to create another page that's going to get the user to log in. So I'm going to click here, create a new page, select auth, and there's one template that I use all the time. which is this one right here. You can use any one that you want. Call it login, click on create page, and we have this page. Head back over to authentication, and for the entry page you want to select login right here. Now we have a couple of errors here, and that is because we need to configure our Google and Apple provider, and in this tutorial we're not going to be using them, so I'm just going to delete them just to simplify things. Okay, and I'm going to do the same thing for the login as well. I'm just going to delete this right here. And in fact, I'm going to delete that entire container. All right here. And now we've deleted. We still have a couple of errors. We have an auth action that's not set up correctly because it needs a confirm password field in order to create account. So what you can do is you can come in here. You can simply duplicate this widget. You can call it password2. And now if you come here, you can actually configure it with password 2 because we have that. Now we still have this one final issue here. Click on it, you will see that auth provider Google is not supported. So if you click here, you just want to set your auth provider to email here, okay? And then you can set your fields, email, and password right here with a password confirm field, okay? So now you should have no issues, and indeed we do not have any issues. So right now your app should work. We should be able to run this app and log in as that user that we set up earlier in the video. So let's go ahead and try this right now. Let's go ahead and run our app and see if at least authentication works. All right, here's our app, and we can go into login and try to log in with that user. So I believe it was james@james.com, password also James. We're going to click on sign in, and we have signed in successfully. And in fact, you can go back to your Supabase project. You can go into logs. And so here you see a login request. So if you have any issues whatsoever with Supabase, it's not working like you would expect, then you can simply click on logs and select the right system that you're working with, right? Whether it's Postgres, REST, which are the API calls, storage, real-time, etc., etc. And here you can see that we have no issues. Everything is perfectly fine. All right, so now that we've tested that the authentication works, we also were able to pull in the schema with the tables and the views. The next thing that we can do is we can have the home page display some information from the table with the view. So here we have the home page, and what we want to do is we want to create a data table that's going to be really easy for displaying this data. And let's take a look at our tables and our views and what kind of data we want to display. Here we are looking at our tables and views. We have one table and one view. Now, because this table here does not have an owner, this view will be empty because this view is trying to get all the data together. And so I'm going to go to this table right here, and I'm going to assign it an owner. So I'm going to click here, and here we're looking at auth users, and this is the only user that we have. So we can simply click on it, and that's going to make the link. And now if we go into the views here, we should be able to see all the data getting pulled from the table, the cars table, as well as the users table. And so we can use this view to pull in the data in our app. So let's go back to our app, and on this data table, you want to click here and you want to add a backend query. And here you're going to select Supabase query. The table is going to be car info, a list of rows. We're going to say confirm. Okay, and so now it has the data that's being fed. Next, I want to configure the column headers here. Okay, so I'm going to say this is, mod brand, and this is email. Okay, so that we know that, we're getting all the data, and this is the email of the user. And we can also create another column if we want. We can just specify 3 columns. So this, let's say this instead is going to be brand model, and this is going to be the email. Okay, so we have this here, and now what we want to do is we want to actually pull in data. So for this brand, we're going to click here, car info, select brand, click here, car info, select model, and click here, car info, select email. And so now it should display a list of records populated in this data view. So let's go ahead and run our app, come back here, let's do an instant reload, and let's see if it works as expected. All right, and here's our app, and as you can see, it's able to pull in all the data. In this case, this is just the single record here This thing is wrapping, and that is because it doesn't have enough space. That is fairly easy to fix. But all in all, we were able to successfully pull the data from our Supabase back here. Now, let's say you want to add data. How would you do that? Well, it's actually very, very simple. And so the first thing that you want to do is you want to create a couple of input fields. Let's do that right now. One text field, another text field right here, and another text field here. And we can place them above this data table, put it right here and right there. So we have these three text fields. Let's go ahead and add a button. Now we have a button here above this data table. And now what we can do is we can give these text fields a label. So this is input brand, so that we know this is input, and this is input user. Okay, and let's go ahead and change the labels real quick. This is and the user. And in fact, for the user, we are going to be using the authenticated user since we have that in the app state. We're going to delete that. And now we have brand and model. Okay, and this button here is going to say add. Okay, and we're going to create our action flow. Add action, you want to search for Supabase, insert row, table is going to be cars, that's the only table we have, and we have these fields. Okay, so you want to get all these fields, and you really don't need to populate these two fields because they're going to be done for us automatically. We're going to remove this, and for the brand, we're going to say widget state, input brand. It's going to be widget state, input model, and for the owner ID, this is going to be authenticated user ID. Now, we're not done yet. After you insert the record with Supabase, what you want to do is you want to refresh the data. So if you type refresh database request, and here you can select the widget, this data table, that way refreshes the data. All right, so let's go ahead and test this out. Let's go ahead and reload this. All right, so let's go ahead and add a new record. So let's say we're gonna add another car, Audi S4. Click on add, and there you see it, Audi S4, and this is the same user that's logged in right now. Let's say we add another car. This is going to be Toyota Camry. Okay, and there you see it. And now you can go back to your database. This thing is going to reload automatically, and here we see in the view the data being pulled up correctly. And if we go into cars, you're going to see all the cars there with the correct owner ID. Last but not least, let's also add some functionality so that we can delete these records here as well. So you can do this in this data table. And I'm going to click on this data table, add another column. This column is going to be delete column. And here I'm going to add a button here, replace. And now we have a button, and button text is going to be D for delete. We can also add an icon button, right? So you can do an icon button. That may be a better option. We're gonna change how it looks for the icon button. We're gonna click here and this one. Yeah, this looks nice. Okay, something like this. Let's go ahead and remove the accent color. Okay, and the radius as well. Okay, so something like this. Make it a little bit bigger. All right, so something like this. And now we can attach an action. Just search for delete row, disable cars. Next, you want to specify your matching rows here, and let's say we want to delete where a model is equal to the model that we are looking at. So we're going to select this model right here, and we are ready to test out our app. So let's go ahead and do an instant reload. All right, here's our app. And let's say we want to delete this Ferrari right here. All we need to do is click here, and we've deleted it. And now if you reload the app, we should no longer see that Ferrari there. Now, one thing that is not quite supported just yet, at least at the time of filming this video, is the fact that you can't really search and filter records from FlutterFlow. So with FlutterFlow, you can click here and you can have a query and you can filter, but the filter does not allow you to filter on just substrings of a specific variable. So for instance, let's say I want to find all models that have a certain string in them. I really can't do that here. Okay, it's not possible. I can just do an exact match, but I can't do a more of a fuzzy filter. Fortunately, you can easily do that via API. So if you come back here, you go into this API docs here, you select what you want to find. So let's say this car info, and you select bash, and you also configure your key right here. Now you want to scroll down to filtering, Here, this is going to tell you how you can filter. So for instance, you can just select and then you can have a filter there. So what you want to do is you want to copy this, import this request. You can see what it looks like. So if I do this here, you can see everything that you need to know about this request. So these are the keys here. You can just copy the key. This is API key, paste that in there, add this other header, authorization, this final header, 09, paste this URL here. And if you take a look at URL parameters, this is where you specify the parameters, and you can just copy that, go into query parameters, and you can put ID followed by select. ID you can specify, let's say it's equal 1, string, and then select is here. Now here you want to specify on what column do you want to search for. So let's say we want to search for a brand that has the word Audi in it. And here you can specify the name of the string that you want to filter for. Okay, so if we take a look at our database, we have Audi here. And so if I put Audi here, this is going to be a case-insensitive search for any word in this brand column that has Audi in it, right? We're going to hit save, come back here, test API, and you're going to get back this result right here. Now, if I also put something like DI, that's also going to match Audi. Hit save, response, and test. And we still match Audi. And so this is a very nifty way of searching for things, right? The user types something, and you want to search for something, you can take the user's input and put it in here by creating a variable. So let's say this is search string right here, and we can put s type string, hit save, and then here in this query parameter, you can specify it like this. Okay, so now you can come in here and you can specify, let's say the user wants Audi, you can do that and you're gonna match Audi. Let's say the user wants DI, that should still match Audi. And then you can go back to your UI builder and you can create another data table that's going to be getting the results from the searches. And the second data table is going to get data from this API. So what we want to do is come back here, do an API call, search, and let's say we specify a fixed string. This is going to be Audi, confirm, and we're going to pull in the data, JSON body, confirm, and then these are going to be the items. Confirm. Okay, and now what you want to do is you can actually specify the certain item. So this item right here, this is going to be JSON path item. This is going to be item model right here, JSON path model. This is going to be the email. And I'm going to remove this delete because we're only showing the results. So I'm going to specify data table to have 3. All right, so let's go ahead and run our app and let's see if it's showing us the correct data. All right, so here's our app, and here we are displaying all the records regardless of what we're searching for, right? Just all the records, and here they are. And here we are searching for a specific record. So if I come back here and let's say I want to change what I'm searching for, so I come back here, I do this backend query, and let's say I change Audi to something like BMW. Okay, hit confirm. Now this should be empty because there are no BMWs there in our records, at least not anymore because we deleted it. All right, so there's our app, and as you can see here, we still have all the records. This is the single Audi car record, and here we do not have any more records. And so this is a very, very nifty way to implement advanced search functionality in your FlutterFlow app with your Supabase backend. Now, if you're as excited about Supabase as I was when I first discovered it, and especially after I started to build some complex apps with it, and I realized that it's so much easier than some of the other backends, then you definitely need to join our amazing Patreon community. Because when you join our amazing Patreon community, not only will you get access to all the apps that I publish on this channel, as well as this one, plus over 100 different apps that I published on this channel in the past, you will also get extra content such as Q&As, live streams, behind the scenes content, and our Patreon supported masterclass series where I do deep dives about different topics that the community needs more clarification on. Typically the community wants on a specific topic, and I create a detailed walkover and a tutorial video about this specific topic. Plus, you're also going to get support in the form of various questions answered about specific apps that I built and about specific videos that I make. And so if you're serious about no code, maybe you're trying to build that app that you've been putting off for a while, or maybe you want to start a business and actually do this for a living, then you definitely need to join our amazing Patreon community, because you're going to get a ton of value that's going to go a long way in your no-code journey. But beyond that, when you join our amazing Patreon community, you're going to be supporting this channel and supporting my work, and that is greatly, greatly appreciated. So if all that I've just mentioned sounds like something that it might be interesting to you, then definitely check out our amazing Patreon community and consider becoming a member. And you can do just that via the link in the description of the video. So I really, really hope to see you there.